I'm Hal Hickel. I was the animation director on Rango at Industrial Light and Magic. Our history with animated features began actually back in the 90s. ILM was going to do an animated feature for Universal that featured some characters from the Frankenstein movies. It was an original concept. And there were a lot of people at ILM at that time that were just really dying to do an animated feature. That project didn't end up happening, and then subsequently Lucasfilm set up a separate division for doing animation, and ILM kind of went back to focusing on live action films, on visual effects. And then, as happens a lot in life, when you stop looking for something, it comes to you. Gore Verbinski, we worked with him on the 3 Pirates of the Caribbean films, and he came to us with this project, and it was a match made in heaven, because it wasn't a classically sort of cartoony project. If it were, I think we animators would have been just as excited. But I think that the look of this film, this sort of gritty, realistic look, combined with the fact that it was keyframe animated, it was a hand animated film, was a great marriage. We got to leverage all our artists who make really realistic things in CG, and our animation team, and bring all that together. And so it was a great fit for us, and a lucky stroke. Yeah, I think we hoped that it would be successful for us as a studio, as an endeavor, so that we could look forward to doing more animated features, that whatever technology we developed, or new just modes of working, or new pipeline things that came out of this project would benefit really anything ILM did, but especially it would just open up a new sort of area for us that we could move forward with. I don't think we ever wanted it to just be a one-off project. And then on top of which, there is this other branch of the Lucas companies, Lucas Animation, and we also knew that whatever we learned on this would benefit them as well in the work that they do on Clone Wars and their other projects. Mike Bauer was our DPS, our digital pipeline supervisor, and he had come from having some experience in digital features at DreamWorks, and so he was one of the key people actually on the production who had digital feature experience, and so we had him. We also had some folks like Tony Platt, who had been working at Lucas Animation on their projects, who came on board Rango and also helped us sort of set up our pipeline. And a lot of the pieces of our pipeline on Rango were stuff we already had in place from working on very large-scale visual effects projects, but other aspects had to be really revamped or be completely new. Like, for instance, Layout is a group that on our visual effects projects, their main concern is taking the live action footage and moving the cameras, matching the camera motion with the CG camera, so that when we render our dinosaurs or whatever it is, they can be married to the live action footage and match in. On Rango, there is no live action footage. We're not putting our work into a live action film. It's all CG. And so the Layout group, their challenge on this film is to take the 2-dimensional storyboards and translate them into 3D, and that's a totally different skill set. So our Layout group was a new thing for us. Also managing a bazillion assets. Generally we're creating creatures and environments, and we're inserting them into a live action film, so a lot of what's in the frame is real. On a digital feature, of course, you're creating everything, every pebble, every cactus, every wagon wheel chandelier, every shot glass, etc. So managing all those assets and feeding them all into Layout, where they get put in by our set dressers, all of that workflow was new to us. So we had to work out tools and procedures and checks and all that kind of stuff in a way that we hadn't had before. But having Mike Bauer and having Tony Platt and people like that really helped us out. Yeah, well, we had a huge number of characters. Something like 70 characters that were, they weren't all hero, but any of those 70 could have a close-up. They were detailed enough for that, and many of them had lines of dialogue. And then on top of that, we had a lot of background characters we had to create as well. So it was a huge cast, and I think the challenge is that if you come into making an animated film from the perspective of someone who's used to making animated films, you're always thinking about economy, because obviously for a crowd scene, those are all people you have to create, and so you might think of it in terms of what's the sort of cheapest way we can create the effect of a crowd, whereas a live action director is coming at it from the experience of you hire 200 extras and you have them all day, so you might as well throw them into every shot. Why not fill it, have your crowd in every shot? You've got them all there, you're paying them. So what that ended up meaning is that we had a director who, he's very CG savvy. He came from a background in visual effects. But that said, he wanted to make sure this film felt like the westerns he was used to seeing. When we're in the town of dirt, he doesn't want just a token background character here and there to make it feel like there are townspeople. He wants the town to be full of people wandering around and doing things and going about their business. So that sort of scale and complexity, I think that in and of itself was the biggest challenge for us, having to create a lot of characters for, frankly, a reasonable cost. We did have a budget to adhere to, and on top of the number of characters was just the high level of detail. Almost all the characters have either scales or feathers or fur. They're all wearing clothing that has to be simmed. There's all the grit and grime and dirt and just tactile sort of fuzziness and weirdness. And so, the number of characters, the high level of detail, and wanting to see those characters in many shots, not just the one big crowd shot, and then you sort of cheat away from that in all the other shots. That's not how gore works. So I think that the scale of things was really our biggest challenge. ILM, fortunately for us, as neophytes to the world of feature animation, at the least, we had experience with really large scale visual effects projects, 2,000 shot shows, and so in that way we were prepared for the scale of something like an animated feature. We needed some new tools and some new procedures for certain aspects of it. But in terms of managing a large show, scheduling a large show, and dealing with all that information, at least there we were in a good spot. Also, we have a lot of good tools effects-wise, for instance, for dust and fire and smoke and those kinds of things, water. So those things weren't a concern going into it. We had to innovate here and there, and some things we had to figure out maybe more economical ways of doing certain things because of the scale of the project. But in general, we had good tools for doing all those things. Likewise with the cloth sim and creature rigging, all those things. There weren't a lot of things where we went into the project saying to ourselves, we don't know how we're going to do that. We had all the pieces in place. It was more just about putting together a really strong kind of bulletproof pipeline that the work would move along and not get stalled at certain pinch points. Because with a machine as large as an animated feature, where there's a lot of work that's having to move through, one little train wreck along the way and a lot of stuff piles up. So you've got to just make sure that the work is always moving along. And as the layout gets handed off to the animator hands it off to the TD for lighting, TD hands it off to the compositor, that each of those handoffs goes smoothly, and that the next artist isn't all of a sudden shooting something that's broken and having to figure out why and waste their time. So there are a lot of checks you have to put in place and procedures to sort of just make sure that the data you're passing along is good. And those were things, again, that we had experience with, but visual effects projects tend to move quicker, and you kind of just power through that stuff. And on this, it was less of a sprint and more of a marathon, and we had to think of it that way and really ensure that things were going to work smoothly and not waste artist time.